So that was something that was attracting my attention at that time.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how we all see the world, right? And some of us see different things. And when you're talking about like the plants and animals and things like that, I would say that my interest in like animals especially didn't come until much later in my life. I definitely was interested in more shiny objects, whenever I was growing up. But yeah, it is always interesting to hear, those stories. But I'm sure in
Yeah.
your 20 years of your career, you must have had some really pivotal moments as well. And so would love to hear more about, as you sort of made your journey through, what is it that kept you interested and more or less landed you where you are now?
I think if I'm looking on my career and my development as a person, as a professional person in some of the companies I work for, was the major thing that was always intriguing for me was the first, I had my own curiosity to learn always new things. And the most interesting things were always touching the innovation, things that were never existent before. And now somebody came up with them and started developing new things. Uh, Not, when you graduate from high school and you learn all the chemistry and biology that was there 100 years ago or 50 years ago, that's something you need to go through. It's not necessarily fascinating or intriguing, but once you go into the industry, and if you tie your career with some of the more startup edge companies, you are facing a lot of new, fascinating, innovating things. And together with my curiosity, that's obviously leading you to be exposed to these cutting edge new things. And that's much more fascinating, interesting, and that obviously was influencing also my development career because I was growing from big corporates that I was at the beginning to more the startup world and those places. And also as a function, when you go from existing sales to do business development, and that's really exploration of new frontiers and new fields that were not existing before you came over there.
Yeah, I feel like there's a there's a definite sort of transition that you have to make, especially if you're working, with large corporations versus smaller ones. Especially, in large corporations, I feel like things are so constrained. I remember my first sort of transition in industry was from a smaller company to a very large company, and I remember, essentially one of the conversations I had had with somebody was, you know, your role is only to do this one little part. It's not essentially all these things around it. And it was a big transition for me to go that way. And then to, work in corporate America for a number of years and then come back out and be in smaller organizations again. It's it's one of those things where I love the excitement of having broad level responsibility, but also I can understand why, larger corporations have to have more focus as well.
Yeah. It's not necessarily contradicting. On one hand, you can say big corporates are serving you stability, and maybe you may feel that you are a small screw in a big organization and you do a very minor thing or something that is not the whole picture itself. Nevertheless, there are some corporates recently in the past 10 years, I would say, or even more, a lot of corporates were either opening their own CVCs, corporate venture capital. So they are also exploring the fields of innovation. And in any of those existing corporates, they also have a special department which is dealing with the new frontiers and innovation. Nevertheless, if you want to grow your career as a person, moving from big corporates, giving you more chances in startups where you can capture a higher position with more influence and more capability to lead strategy and execute it. While in big corporates, when you start young and obviously some of the top rank positions are already captured, you need to spend at least 10 years or more till they will be open again. And sometimes if your rhythmus is in a higher rate, you want to move faster. So sometimes you need to either sacrifice a lot of years standing by in big corporations, or you can grow your career, but you need to leave the stability that corporate gives you and go to startup areas.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is definitely a journey, and I feel like a different environment. But I also would think that in your specific role in business development, that you have to see, drastic differences from, what it would be maybe in, large corporations versus, where you're at Evogene. I just am curious, first of all, if you could describe a little bit of what business development is. I've asked this question a few times, whenever I've had coffee with people who are in business development, and I'm like, can you explain the difference to me between, um, being in sales versus being in business development? Because I see them as adjacent, but not the same. And just curious to see if your experience is the same.
Yeah, listen, when I was fulfilling vice president position of sales and marketing, obviously I came into existing market, into existing portfolio, and I was given price conditions, term payment conditions, and so on and so on. And then I was maneuvering between the different clients to sell them in the maximum rate possible and increase the capacity. And that was on existing materials, existing products. When it comes to business development, in most of the cases, the company may have developed something, but the market is not yet over there. That means that you need to explore. Sometimes you need to educate the market. Sometimes you are entering into existing market, but this way or another, for the company itself, you need to create the market for its product. It doesn't exist over there for a natural course. So you need to approach potential clients. You need to profile what is the target audience, which clients you need to approach, and which unmet problem you're answering. So it's really one stage before sales. And it's more fascinating because you actually, for me, as I said, the major essence is creating something out of nothing. You are reaching a virgin ground, something that was never over there before you came in, and you are really paving the new road for the company. So that's business development. Sales, you're entering already an existing scenario. You just need to increase or fulfill your KPIs to reach the goal.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's an important definition because I do think, that there are different people, especially that listen to the show, that are kind of exploring different things for their future. And who knows, maybe the next level of, business development leaders out there and considering the future. And your words, you could actually, speak to them in terms of the direction that they're wanting to go as well.
But by the way, as a person that was experiencing both routes, I would say, and people may challenge that, but I would say that doing business development is much more challenging than doing sales. Because eventually when you're approaching sales, the clients over there, they recognize your product. It's a matter of terms and conditions that you'll help you to score. When we talk about business development, it's really paving a new frontier or a new road. Sometimes you need to educate, sometimes you need to pass through convincing the other side. It's not necessarily something that he needs to have. It's sometimes good to have, but not something that obliges him. So for me, business development, it's much more challenging. Obviously, some people may challenge that and say, sales, you have numbers to meet, you have budget to fit, you have all those things. It's a different scenario. Both of them are challenging, but business development is really, to my opinion, doing both of the things. It's much more, first, interesting, but it's also much more challenging. And eventually, the end game of business development is sales, because once you succeeded convincing somebody about the technology, you eventually sign an agreement, which start with, let's say, POC, but later on it may turn into a continuous sales. So that's one stage before, I would say.
Yeah, and I what I'm hearing as well is that there's a level of if you think about both roles, right? There's both strategy and tactical execution that are involved in both roles. If I hear you correctly, your feeling is that business development has much more strategy first and then tactics on the back end. And in general sales, maybe it's, less of the strategy because that's already done and the market's already explored. You kind of know where product market fit is. And so, finding that is something that business development would have done ahead of